Hi guys, I Dr. Jayant Kumar Durandar, Assistant Professor, Kalyan Law College, Bhilai. Today I talk to about how to study Sale of Goods Act 1930. So start. Sale of Goods Act 1930. I will divide it by 7 topics. First is formation of the contract of sale. Second, condition and warranties. Third, caveat emptor. Fourth, transfer of property. Fifth, transfer of title. Sixth, performance of the contract. Seventh, rights of unpaid seller against goods. Eighth, suits for the breach of contract. And ninth है auction sale. The whole object of sale of goods is to transfer property from one person to another. The Sale of Goods Act 1930 itself come into force on the first day of July 1930. It may also be noted here that Indian Contract Act 1872 is a parent act. It lays down general principle of contract including the Sale of Goods Act. The Sale of Goods Act contained 1 to 66 sections. According to section 2 in this act, unless there is anything repugnant in the subject of content. First, buyer means a person who buys or agrees to buy goods. Second, delivery means voluntary transfer of possession from one person to another. Formation of the contract of sale. A contract of sale is defined in section 4.1 of the Sale of Goods Act 1930. It provides a contract of sale of goods is a contract whereby the seller transfers or agrees to transfer the property in goods the buyer for a price. There may be a contract of sale between one part owner and another. By making an above analysis, we find that following 4 essential elements of the Sale of Goods Act. First, two parties, a seller and a buyer. Second, goods, the subject matter of the contract agreement. Third, transfer of property. And fourth, price, money consideration. Conditions and warranties. There may be a number of terms and stipulation in a contract of sale. All these terms are not of equal significance. A stipulation in a contract of sale with reference to goods which are the following thereof may be a condition or a warranty. 12.1. Second one is a condition is a stipulation essential to the main purpose of the contract, the breach of which gives rise to right to treat the contract as repudiate. 12.2. Third one is a warranty is a stipulation collateral to the main purpose of the contract. The breach of gives rise to a claim for damages but not to a right to reject the goods and treat the contract as repudiate. 12.13. Fourth one is whether a stipulation in a contract of sale is condition or warranty depends in each case on the construction of the contract. A stipulation may be a condition though called a warranty in the contract. 12.4. Next one is caveat emptor. The expression caveat emptor means buyer beware. In other words, before buying the goods, it is the duty of buyer to ensure that the goods are of the quality which he wants. The principle of caveat emptor has been incorporated in section 16 of the Sale of Goods Act 1930. In the following words, subject to the provision of this act and to any other law for the time being in force, there is no implied warranty or condition as to the quality or fitness for any particular purpose of goods supplied under a contract of a sale. That is caveat emptor means buyer beware. In modern times, the conditions, circumstances, and trends of trade and commerce have undergone considerable changes. Indeed, the rule of caveat emptor seems to have become the rule of caveat venditor. That is to say, instead of buyer to be careful before buying in has become the duty of the seller to be beware and careful before selling the goods. Exceptions to the rule of caveat emptor. Following are the exceptions to the rule of caveat emptor. First, implied condition as to the fitness for buyer's purpose, section 16.1. Second one is implied condition of merchantable quality, section 16.2. Transfer of property. First, this is to clear from section 4.1 of the Sale of Goods Act and 1930, which provides that a contract of sale of goods is a contract whereby the seller transfers or agrees to transfer the property in goods to the buyer for a price. Second one is, according to section 5.1, the contract may provide for the immediate delivery of the goods or immediate payment of the price or both, or for the delivery or payment by installments, or that the delivery or both shall be postponed. Third, risk prima facie passes with the property because with the transfer of property, the buyer becomes the owner of the goods and therefore becomes responsible for all risk of the property, section 26. Transfer of title. The law relating to transfer of title is based on famous ancient maxim nemo dat quod non habet, which means that a person cannot confer a better title that he has. For the example in Hollins versus Fowler, a person who has his possession stolen goods or where a person obtains goods by fraud, he cannot pass a good title to the buyer. The real owner can recover the goods from such a buyer. The principle has been incorporated in section 27 of the Sale of Goods Act 1930 in the following words: subject to the provision of this act and of any other law for the time being in force where goods are sold by a person who is not the owner thereof and who does not sell them under the authority or with the consent of the owner, the buyer acquires no better title to the goods that the seller had unless the owner of the goods is by conduct precluded from denying the seller's authority to sell. Performance of the contract. The general duties of seller and buyer are described in section 31 of the Sale of Goods Act 1930. Section 31 provides it is the duty of the seller to deliver the goods and the buyer to accept and pay for in accordance with the terms of the contract of sale. The parties may include as many terms as they like. They may waive the reciprocal promises or modify it as they like. Section 32 that unless otherwise agreed, delivery of goods and payment of the price are concurrent conditions, that is so to say the seller shall be ready and willing to give possession of the goods to the buyer in exchange for the price, and the buyer shall be ready and willing to pay the price in exchange for the please soon of the goods. Rights of unpaid seller against goods. Section 45(1) unpaid seller has been defined in the following words. The seller of a goods is deemed to be an unpaid seller within the meaning of this act. A. When the whole of the price has not been paid or tendered. B. When a bill of exchange or other negotiable instrument has been received as conditional payment and the condition on which it was received has not been fulfilled by reason of the dishonor of the instrument or otherwise. For the purpose of unpaid seller of Sale of Goods Act containing the above definition, the definition of seller has been widened in section 45(2). Section 45(2) provides the term seller includes any person who is the position of seller as for instance an agent who has himself paid or is directly responsible for the price. Thus, under section 46, the unpaid seller has following rights against the goods. First, unpaid seller's lien. Second, right of stoppage in transit. Third, right of resale. Suit for the breach of contract by seller against the buyer, by the buyer against the seller. Third, remedies for the buyer and seller. Next one is auction sale. Section 64 of the Sale of Goods Act 1930 deals with auction sale. They are followings. First, each lot a separate contract. Second, competition of contract in auction sale. Third, right to reserve a bid by or on behalf of the seller. Fourth, auction sale subject to a reserved or upset price. Fifth, effect or pretended bid to raise the price.